Did we turn the volume up on these? I guess. Okay, well, it is a couple of minutes after 6 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's call the Johnston City Council work session number 21-18 to order. Brett, roll call, please.
Cool. Here. Evans. Martin.
Here. Oh.
Burkhart. Here.
Be a little bit too loud. Okay, the first item, we have 3 discussion items this evening. The first being an update on the zoning and subdivision update process. David?
Good evening. Just a pretty quick update for you as we're continuing to work through the zoning code, excuse me, and subdivision update process. We're in the process. The schedule was included there. We're in between task 2 and task 3, starting to prepare for task 4, which is the big part of the work where we'll be rewriting the various sections of the code. Task 3 is kind of outlining what we think the zoning code is going to look like, how things are going to rearrange and reorganize. And so included in the memo that was attached to your agenda item is an outline that's intended to sort of display how the code will look. Right now, chapters 165 through 172 are zoning. Chapter 180 is subdivision regulations. Chapter 180 is actually the very last chapter in the city code. So we have the ability to stretch that out. And so what you're seeing before you would take zoning from 165 through 190 with some breaks in there to allow for future chapters to be added. And then subdivision regulations would break into 4 separate chapters, 195 through 198. What you'll find right now, if you go to 166, for example, it's the everything category for zoning. So there's over 30 different sections within there. So if you're looking for architecture requirements, it's somewhere in there about 32 or 33, section 32 or 33, it's buried. And so what we're proposing to do with this outline is bring those bigger chapters into their own chapters: architecture, parking, screening and buffering, landscaping, signage, all those types of things would be spread out. And then we'd have a little bit more definition around the chapters 165 through 176 would be more specific to districts and those types of things. So that's kind of the general outline that we're working from today. And then what we'll be doing with Hoisington Kogler from this point going forward is breaking these into sort of modules and starting to rewrite pieces of those. So when we bring them back, there'll be pieces of code that would fall into these new chapter designations. So that's kind of the direction we're going. We're shooting for the first module to review for code at the Planning and Zoning Commission at the end of October. And I'll make sure as those items are coming before the commission that you're aware of what they're seeing and have the opportunity to attend if you'd like to, or probably the meeting following those meetings will have at least a little blurb on your agenda so you're aware of and have any questions, we can talk through those. So a fair amount of this is going to be somewhat mundane where it's just, hey, we're cleaning this up. But there will be others certainly where there'll be a lot more discussion. We'll try to flush that out as we move forward. I haven't got a calendar. But we are expecting another joint meeting, and we're trying to take advantage of the 5 Monday month. So January 24th is a 5 Monday month. So we're targeting that for a joint meeting of the commission and the council as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Just wanted to keep you up to speed as we're continuing to move forward with the project.
David, I appreciate the update. Just a quick question. It's more out of curiosity because I'm not really expecting a good response to it right now. But the chapter where you have everything thrown in right now and you're going to break it out, is there going to be some logical ordering of that so that people don't have to wade through?
That's what this intent is. So right now, everything is just buried in there as separate subsections, and everything from home occupations to accessory dwelling or accessory uses to landscaping and parking and all those things. So some of them that are in there are more procedural or more related to a district. We'll move those clauses. There are other things that need to stand on their own: parking, landscaping, architecture. Those just need to be a chapter. you're looking, general public walks in, I want to know about architecture. They're going to look at the big headings and they're going to look for architecture. And under this system, they'll be able to find it. Today, it's buried very deep in a subchapter. So
With word search, it's easier these days to find things, but do we have like a table, an index or something at the end, or a table? And how does someone find what it is that they're looking for?
we'll have a table of contents at the beginning. I think the code itself at the end has a index as well.
Okay,
Yeah, on the online code has the search function actually works pretty well.
any other questions for David on this item?
I appreciate how you kind of identified that some of the changes are kind of going to be more mundane and then others might be more substantive, because I think we'll want to focus some may want to focus on all of them, but I think that want to make sure we're highlighted and focus on those that are of more substantive of nature and can focus on those. So appreciate your identifying that already. So
Some I'm guessing are going to be pretty non-controversial. It's just, we're already doing that procedural process that way or whatever.
Right.
And certainly others we're going to want to dive into more.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is a review of the updated water shortage plan.
This evening, I wanted to talk with the council and present the updated water shortage plan. What I'd like you to know is we've actually had a plan in place since 2015, so this is truly an update. The former plan that we had really relied heavily on the language that was in the Des Moines Waterworks water shortage plan. And it's really important that Des Moines Waterworks and Johnston work together, because if Des Moines Waterworks isn't able to produce enough water, it does impact our residents as well. So with Des Moines Waterworks, they collect the raw water, they treat the raw water, and they transmit it to the city of Johnston. If anything falls apart in that process, then it does impact the amount of water we can have for our residents. Once the water gets to Johnston, we then distribute it to our customers, and that requires for our water mains, our water pumps, and our water towers all to work as well to make sure that we have adequate amounts of water. Since 2015, the city has made a lot of improvements to our system, upgrading pumps and mains and those kinds of things. So we're in pretty good shape as far as providing water service to our citizens. But the reality is that there are times when we do have to consider utilizing the water shortage plan. And one of those times was this year, as you may recall, in June. Due to the ongoing drought conditions, we had to implement stage 1 of the water shortage plan. And it wasn't from the Johnston side of things, it was actually from the Des Moines Waterworks facility to have enough water available to treat and send to all their customers, over 500,000 customers across the metro area. Where they were, for example, on the Raccoon River, where they take water from the Raccoon River, it usually on average has about 4,000 gallons per second that passes that area, and it was down to 300 gallons per second. So the volume of water available to treat and provide to the area was really impacted and continues to be impacted with the drought conditions. So again, we had to implement the water shortage plan earlier this year, and that can happen from time to time. So I wanted to, and Brett, can you bring up the report there, please?
The first one?
Yes. And if you go down to almost the bottom of the last paragraph on the first page, this provides some information to the council on how much water our customers actually use on a daily basis, where it says Johnston water demand. Our average demand on our water system is about 1.6 million gallons a day. So that means that our residents are using 1.6 million gallons to cook, flush toilets, use appliances in the home, taking baths and showers and those kinds of things. So that's the minimum amount of water that we typically would use on a regular day. When you add in the seasonal water usage, particularly for irrigation and watering gardens and those kinds of things, our average usage goes up to 3 million gallons a day. And then when you have severe drought conditions like we've experienced, where there's long periods of dry conditions, our residents can use up to 6.8 million gallons a day. So that's over 3 times the amount of water that we use on a typical day. Actually, with the normal usage from 1.7 to 3 million gallons, that's almost double just And most of that is irrigation. Most of that is water being put on lawns, treated water that we have. So what we try to do with this water shortage plan is recognize that we are tied in with Des Moines Water Works, but also I'll show that we all also have our own system that we have to manage as well. And so this plan is probably a little bit more simplified than the former plan was, because we tried to make sure it was user friendly. The former plan, as it followed Des Moines Water Works plan, was very technical. And so we wanted to make this a little bit simpler for us to follow. But the plan really is the first 2 pages that you see here, and talks about how we implement it. Probably the main thing with this is, once we do have to implement the plan, is communication to our citizens. And the communication can take various forms, and we don't prescribe any particular form, because it sort of depends on whether it's a large event that affects the whole community, or it could be a broken water main in a small neighborhood where we communicate directly with those residents, but they all could relate to a water shortage at some point in time. It's important for us to work with Des Moines Water Works, because if their system is experiencing difficulties in treatment of the water, then we need to communicate that with our citizens. But that typically is communicated to the whole metro area, because it doesn't just affect Johnston, it affects all their customers. And then if the issue is within the Johnston system, then that would mean some other type of communication we have that'd be more specific to our residents. So we just want to recognize the fact that each of those are 2 different circumstances and situations which require different communication from Des Moines Water Works and from the city of Johnston. You'll see in the plan, there's actually 4 stages that are identified. We did get into stage 1 this year of water conservation. And that was primarily because of the inability to get adequate amount of water that could go into to our customers, as well as the customers across the metro. And the idea of the phase 1 is to try to reduce 25% of the irrigation usage, which basically is about 10% of the volume typically used on a daily basis. And so you can see on the screen the action to reduce 25% reduction in lawn irrigation is really to encourage our customers. It's more of a communication issue, asking them to not water as much and consider not irrigating on Mondays and then following an every other day irrigation system. And actually, we've been going out with that communication anyway, usually every year, because it's just good water conservation to not water every single day. I mean, there's certain amounts of water that is really beneficial to the lawn. So actually, we have had situations where people just over irrigate their lawns. And so, but when we get to stage 1, we are really going out and saying, please do this, so that we can make sure that there's enough water for everybody to be involved. But if you look at some of the other bullet points, we suspend the hydrant flushing program, except when we need to manage water quality. We minimize some of the high use activities, such as our street sweeping, and then coordinate high water use customers to encourage water conservation. So again, we did get to stage 1 this year. We've done this probably 2 or 3 times since 2015. And but then you go into other stages, stage 2, 3, and 4, which are further regulations on the use of water based on the volume of water that's available to our citizens. So you go clear up to stage 4, which is where you get in possibly to having to
Rationing.
Thank you. Rationing water, which we haven't gotten back on, but I guess technically we did back in 1993. When we had the situation with flooding in Des Moines. So, that was a severe water situation where most of the central Iowa was without water for a number of days. So we have gotten into some of these other levels. But the main purpose this evening is just to share with the council the updates that we have done. We did share this with the Public Works Committee, and they reviewed it. So the plan is to present it to the council this evening just for communication purposes and answer any questions. And the idea is we would eventually adopt this by the city council. So this would be our new plan going forward.
No, I'd just like to thank you and Shane for their work on that. I believe just for clarification on stage 4, we kind of had some questions about what that would look like when we talked about water rationing. Is that per that household or just setting one rate? And you know, that was kind of I throw that out there. Basically, as Teresa is concerned with billing, I think we can work through that at the end. It would be based on that household usage. That would just seem to be fair across the board. So I just wanted to clarify that from that.
Thanks, Matt. Jim, I do have a question, and I know I'm now getting a second glance at this. In stage 1, and I think even in stage 2, that second bullet point under action where it talks about how you would alternate days in lawn irrigation. The way it's worded right now, and perhaps I'm still missing it, by a system in which even numbered addresses only water on even days of the month and odd number addresses water only on odd number days of the month. And then if we go down and look at that graphic underneath the enforcement, the fact is that if everybody skips Mondays, we will in fact end up on even, you know, for instance, if Sunday is an even calendar day, and Tuesday then would be an even calendar day. So we kind of have to decide whether or not we're actually going to do that odd even, or we're going to follow what I believe is probably the simpler thing for us and avoid Mondays and everybody just does a week-long process.
Excellent point. And I will admit, I mean, I didn't pick out the difference or the conflict between those two. But I agree. We've been going out with this graphic for a number of years because it is good water conservation to only irrigate every other day. So I think we'll change the language in bullet point 2 and make it consistent with what the graphic shows. I didn't pick that up. Did you, Matt?
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, it shouldn't be even days. It should just be even addresses on those certain days. Right.
We'll make that correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and looking at it, so it doesn't appear that from the irrigation standpoint, there's any difference between stage 1 and stage 2. You're under stage 1. Am I reading that correct?
Now, stage 1, they're looking for a 10% reduction in the overall system by a 25% voluntary reduction in irrigation. And in stage 2, we're looking for a 25% reduction in the overall system by a 50% voluntary reduction in irrigation.
Okay, but it's still the same approach. You basically can irrigate on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday with an odd address, and Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday with an even address.
Yeah,
So how do you get the reduction if you have the same schedule?
Well, if you're watering for, let's say, 20 minutes, you step that back to 15 if you're looking for 20 minutes.
But I mean, I will tell you that. So I mean, I have an irrigation system, and I have it on one setting, and I'd have it on 2 if I could figure out how to do that. And maybe most people can figure that all out. So I guess that's to me, as I looked at it, I couldn't pick up the difference between 1 and 2. To me, it's easier to just, and I realize I've never done a very good job of being more sophisticated and understanding my system, and I probably could get the people who help me to do it. But I just don't know if does it make more sense to go to instead of every other day, every 4th day, or I don't know I've never been an every other day person. I've always said like every 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. And what I did this year was I think I was every 4th day. And so when we reduced it, I just changed it to every 6th day. So I struggled to figure out the distinctions between stage 1 and stage 2 in irrigation. So.
And I think really part of it's an honesty issue. I mean, we're requesting, we're communicating, and if we ever had to get to an enforcement situation, it would be pretty easy to say, okay, it's Thursday, you're an odd day, and if you've got a number ends in an even, that could be an enforcement issue there. So that gives us the ability to do that. But it's something I think we can take a look at and maybe consider. I mean, do we go instead of every other day, every 3rd day or 4th day?
Yeah, you're right. The enforcement's the biggest challenge.
But I would agree with Councilman Cope that you've stated what you're trying to achieve in one, which is a 25% reduction, and then in two, you're stating a 50% reduction, but you haven't said reduce the time that your irrigation system is running by 25%. That, I get what you're saying in that, somebody's going to read this, and even though you've stated you want a bigger reduction, how do they get there is not given to them.
Well, and I think we're leaving that up to the resident, whether that's for time or number of days.
I think it would be fine to say, we would encourage a 50% reduction by even reducing your irrigation by additional days or by shortening the time frame your irrigation runs. If you give them that hint, they may take it. Is that what you were looking for, Councilman?
Well, yeah, something I think is, because as I read it under the action bullets, the verbiage is the same under the stage 1 and stage 2 under irrigation. And then you go to stage, so it sort of feels like to me like stage 1 and stage 2 on the irrigation side are pretty similar. And then we go to stage 3, which you cut it off completely. And so to me, trying to find in step 2, something that some way to, articulate it a little bit better, so it's just easier for people, especially if you don't have maybe a lot of people have figured out, all the different ways to program their irrigation system. I certainly haven't.
We'll try to put some verbiage in there to give at least some thoughts or ideas of how you accomplish that, and then make that change as Councilman Burkhart mentioned.
Anything else for Jim or Matt? Okay, thank you. The final discussion item is Northwest 54th Avenue electric conversion overhead to underground.
Good evening. I'm bringing back an item that we have previously discussed. It's been a couple of years. So just give a little background on the item was during our design of 54th Avenue reconstruction project back in November of 2019, we had discussed with City Council at a work session, do we want to take the electric from overhead to underground, or do we want to leave it overhead? And basically there were two ways to accomplish that at the time. We could have, the city could install at our cost conduit for Mid-American to place that underground in the project. And then the second way was to pay the differential cost, which is more of the traditional method where they give us a price of what it's going to cost to go underground, and then they subtract what it takes them just to move their overhead, and we would pay that difference. During the discussion, it was determined that the city would wait to convert the residential area. Brett, did you bring the design map? Thank you. And go to page 2. So when we looked at this, we had really the residential area that we thought was that'll redevelop in the future. And so going over here to the map, this was really what we had looked at was from 93rd, which just sits off the map here, all the way to 86th Street. It was kind of determined at the time that we would wait to put this electric portion underground and wait for, there could be some possible redevelopment with what's going on up here at the corner. Then, so it was really determined that where we had the new development right here at 88th back to the east to 86th Street, that we would take that underground at that time. We had a cost for the whole project we had a cost for the whole project, or the original project, which was 288th. We had some other issues that we had to resolve with Price Chopper, which extended the project all the way to 86th Street. So with that, we decided that at that time that we would leave the residential underground from 93rd to 88th and take that underground from 88th to 86th Street.
So leave the 93rd to 88 underground or above ground?
Sorry, above ground.
Okay.
Above ground. And then where we had the new development, we would take that underground.
And what that cost was an additional $274,000 from 88th Street to 86th Street to take that underground. So at that time, that's what they had given us a ballpark estimate on. And we moved into phase one of the project, which didn't affect this. We got down to this area earlier this year. And then Mid-American sent us an updated cost. They'd kind of done that after talking with the property owner down here at the corner at 86 and 54th, because they were going to have to find places to put their switch gear as well as transformers. And they looked at putting one right here on this portion of the property. And then they talked about with the property owner, they said, well, we could go ahead and get rid of the lines down on 86th Street and put another switch gear here. But this doesn't really help us with what we're trying to accomplish. If you drive down 86th Street, you'll see the tall transmission poles that have their primary electric on the top, their secondary kind of in the middle, and then you've got the telecommunications on the very bottom. So really the only thing, if you go south of 54th on along 86, you're only getting rid of the middle set of wires. You're still going to have the poles. So I asked them to revise their number and really just go from 88th across 86th Street to the east side and give us a number. That number came in at about $584,000. I'd kind of stepped back and I asked them, you know, why the costs were so dramatically different from what we had received at the first time. And it appears that they had not based their number off of it was really just kind of a ballpark estimate. They completely admitted that they had missed that number. I believe there's probably been some price increases as well. But per our franchise agreement, they give us that number and then we have to pay actual costs. So I believe that over the last couple of years, they've had price increases and they gave us that new number. The other thing that they did was we don't benefit from the differential cost because our original project or our project does not impact the poles. So if you go back to that traditional method, they don't deduct moving that overhead back out of the project zone. So we didn't benefit from that either. That's what also brought part of that price up. So tonight, I'm just really looking for council feedback or consensus on, do we still want to proceed with putting that underground from 88th to 86th at a cost of $584,000.
Yeah, my initial reaction is that's a lot of money for a very short length of putting the overhead underground. This is not a major corridor in our community. I mean, it's a well-traveled road, but it's not 86th Street. It's not Merle Hay. So I'm challenging myself to think, okay, why would we do this? Why would we spend $500,000 to put those lines underground? And I'm not coming up with a good answer.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. We could take this underground at a later time and date. If there is ever any more redevelopment along that corridor, we could then push that underground at that.
So I kind of remember the discussion at that time, and we were talking about the derecho, or maybe it was some other storms that we'd had. And that's why at that time with the $250,000, we were like, well, okay, let's do it because it'll protect our lines and protect, you know, if we'll be protected from a storm. But I would agree with the mayor that the doubling in cost is a concern. I do think that those properties on the south side of 54th will at some point perhaps be changing in their use. And at that time, I would agree that we could look at this bearing of those wires at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of pushing the pause button makes sense. And I think it might also probably make some sense for us to think about strategically where we want to bury problem. That I've never heard us talk specifically about which streets we would, because we buried them on other streets in Merle Hay and 86th Street. So I think we should think about having a strategic element to it. I don't think we really have up to this point, but I would encourage us to do that. Or the Public Works Committee to give some thought to that or whatever, and then bring that back to the council. But and how much, because the cost, and obviously, you know, we've gone over the years I've been on the council on this, we went through a brief period in which Mid-American sort of recognized with like the threats of the ratio and other things, maybe they would actually pay the significant cost, which to help kind of change the dynamic. But their thinking on that lasted for about 6 months. And then they changed their mind again. And so unfortunately, so I do think I would support pausing on this, but and also thinking a little bit more strategically about where we want to do it. So
Yeah, and you're exactly correct. The intersection out here at 62nd and Merle Hay, they put that underground for free. That's what lasted for about 6 months. I think they had about 3 other communities that jumped on board and said, yeah, that's a great idea. And they hit the pause button and backed up. And now they're back to their traditional method.
well, at least we got an important intersection done while the window was open.
I talked with them and that was about $2.2 million worth of work.
Oh.
Underground that
I mean, it's a big
change.
cost.
Oh, Matt, I'm curious about this. How much part of the 54th Avenue has already been underground, is already underground, or it's still overhead?
It's still overhead. The section in Johnston is still overhead. So if you go from 93rd Street, so the power line runs on the south side of the road. And at 93rd Street on the south side is where our corporate limits end and Urbandale starts.
Yeah.
Urbandale has put theirs underground. They're opening that up for development. They have some development opportunities through there. And so they kind of cleaned that up. So from 93rd to 86, we're still overhead. We haven't buried any of our
Okay.
overhead electric underground at this point.
And this $500,000 is only for 2 blocks between 88th and 86th?
Yeah, the 584,000 would essentially just come from the west side of 88th and go over here to the east side of 86th Street, and none of that would take place.
No.
Yeah, it's
Okay. It feels like it's just price gouging or something up here. Anyway,
no, I think they went back and looked at their numbers and they had admitted that they completely missed on that.
yeah, and I agree with the mayor and Rana that this is not worth it. Just leave it. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Well, we have some time here. Jim, do we have anything we can cover now?
Yes, I had a couple of announcements that I was going to make at the end of the city council meeting. I'll go ahead and do those now. This Saturday, on the 25th of September, the Lions Club is going to have an event at their facility on Merle Hay Road. It's sort of a dual purpose. They're celebrating their 75th year of being an organization, and then they're also celebrating the 175th year of the first settlers that came to the Johnston area. And they're doing this in conjunction, I believe, with the Historic Society. The event at the Lions Club is going to be from 1 to 4, but I know at 1:30, the mayor is going to be there and present a proclamation recognizing the Lions Club and their so I just wanted to pass that along. I will see if I can get more details and give that to the city council. That'll be this Saturday. Again, the event's 1 to 4, but 1:30 is when the proclamation will be actually presented to the group. So wanted to pass that along. Also, September 30th, there is planned to be a movie in the yard here at the City Hall. So is that the announcement is or Field of Dreams at 7 o'clock? All right. So we'll be sure to make sure.
Which will be 7 o'clock.
Maybe 5:30, but.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to mention is on September 29th, there is a special city council meeting at 6 o'clock. And it'll be a very short meeting.
What was the date again?
The 29th of September.
No, it's October 6th. Yeah, I was gonna say. It's gonna be a really short.
At 6
meeting.
o'clock.
I have it on my schedule. It's
Is it
canceled.
virtual or we're here? Okay.
Okay. Well, we do have one additional item that is not on the agenda that we want to take up tonight. And that is the fact that our city administrator, Jim Sanders, was recently awarded the City Manager of the Year Award at the Iowa League of Cities. Each year, this award honors city administrators whose work represents the best possible application of management principles and whose creative contributions to professional local government management increase public awareness of the value of professional leadership in our communities. Jim, you've had a lot of accomplishments as city administrator here in the city of Johnston over your years. We've used these numbers a lot, but I'll repeat them again. The city has grown from about 6,000 to its current population of 25,000 since you have been the city administrator. You've served us very well. You've taken us from a small town to an amazing suburb community here in the metro area. You've done it professionally. You worked hard at it, and you've put up with us. The changing personalities on the city council, as well as work to recruit some of the finest people, I think, a city in the metro area has for their staff or anywhere. So just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you've done. And just say that we're proud of you, and the award that you received is very well deserved. So with that, I think we have your family members here, and I think we have some reception food arriving, correct?
And they brought your awards, we can get pictures of the council and you and your family.
This is nice since I missed the actual presentation.
They should have known better to have it at a bar. If you want to get Jim there, have it like at a bike trail, but at a bar?
I had no idea you would go. We'd take some, I don't know, Mary, if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should all go down and join Jim and his family and have our